So you are thinking about going to grad school and you're not sure. Or you are already in grad school and you have no idea what's going on. You don't understand the process. You're just in there and no one's telling you anything and you're just acting like you know what's going on. I understand. I was in the same situation. Hello everyone, I'm Stacy and I received my master's degree from Texas Women's University and I'm currently working on my PhD from there and I'm almost done. And I was one of those people who did not really understand the whole process of going to grad school and while you're in grad school, what you're supposed to do. I really didn't understand all the different languages that they use, the lingo and all of that. I felt like everyone else knew but me. And part of the reason why I didn't know is because I was the first in my family to go to grad school. And, I didn't really have friends that really went. I mean, I had some friends that went, but they went for other degrees and, it was just very different, right? And so this video is to help you guys who are either deciding about going to grad school or you're in grad school now and you are not really sure what the process is that you have to do, okay? So I'm going to start off with going into grad school. So whether you're doing your master's degree or your PhD, you have to do an application process, of course, and they might require you to write an essay or you might have other things that you have to do. So you want to make sure you check with the department to see if there's any extra criteria that you have to do in order to just get into their program, okay? A lot of them require you to do the GRE. And so, yeah, the university might have a required grade that you have to get for the GRE, but you also want to check with the department because the department might have a higher grade than what the university has. So make sure you check with them. Now, if you never took the GRE, don't just go in and take it. You need to study before you take the GRE. It's not like the SAT. It's definitely harder. When I took it, I was surprised. The math was nothing that I've been taught when I was in college. And I took some college, I took college math classes, but I've never seen that stuff before. So, studying it beforehand definitely helped. The same with the literature part. I definitely, if you have a science background, you have a totally different language than people who are in the fine arts and in the literature type of fields. So you definitely need to study for that, especially if you don't have that background, okay? And you might have to take the test more than once. It's perfectly fine. If you don't make the score that you need, yes, you can take it another time. You'll have to pay, but it's better to do that than just give up and quit, right? Like, it's just a test. You can take the test again if you didn't get the score that you need. It's perfectly fine. Okay. After you get in, a lot of people feel that when you say grad school, that the classes are going to be so much different. I know I felt that. I felt like the classes are going to be so much harder and, oh my goodness, it's going to be horrible and hard to study and all that. But I found that it's actually very similar to undergrad, right? You still have lectures, you still have tests, you still have assignments, you still have papers. The format is still the same, right? You might have more to read depending on the class. There were some classes where I had to read more, but then there was some classes I didn't have to read at all, right? So it just depends on the class. And I will say, the classes overall are more in depth, but that's okay because you're taking fewer classes. In undergrad, you take 12 hours and you're considered a full-time student. Well, in graduate school, you take 6 hours, which is 2 classes, you're considered a full-time student. And so the amount of study material that you have is actually pretty equivalent to the 12 hours. So you still end up spending about the same amount of time studying for your 2 classes as you would for 4 classes. So you don't necessarily need to worry about that per se. I will say, just like with undergrad, you will have some classes that are harder than others. That's a given, right? But I wouldn't say that every class is super hard. I feel that, if anything, a lot of the classes are really fun because you get to take classes that focus more on those areas that you really want to learn more about. Undergrad, it kind of just like skims the surface about the topics, and in graduate, you get to go into more detail. So my degree is in nutrition, so a lot of the classes that I took in undergrad, it just like, you might have a chapter on a topic and it'll go into that topic. But I always felt like I didn't get enough information. It's because there's a lot more information on those topics, and that's when you take those different classes. So in grad school, I was able to take classes like on sports nutrition, exercise and nutrition. I took pediatric nutrition, functional foods. There's so many classes that are on specific topics that you can take where you get a greater insight on them. So that's why I love grad school, because you get to learn more about those things that you really, really enjoy. Now, there might be some classes, like I said, that are a little bit challenging, but that's like with undergrad. Anatomy and physiology, that's definitely a hard class. Organic chem, biochem, that's a hard class, right? I would say that some of those classes might be harder than the grad classes. And so if you're able to do those in undergrad, you definitely will be fine with a lot of these graduate classes, okay? So I don't want you to feel as though because it's graduate level that it means it's going to be that much harder. Yes, there are some classes that are really hard. I had some classes where I was crying. But I had some graduate classes that I cried into. So hard is hard, no matter what level, okay? I will say that it does gradually build up. So again, my degree is in nutrition. So in undergrad, we learn about metabolism. We learn about like the Krebs cycle and, the metabolizing of carbs, proteins, and fats, right? And we had to study them. We had to memorize a lot of details about it. Well, when I get to my master's degree, I still had to learn about those things again. So they retaught it, but then they taught a little bit more. So, I had to study just a little bit more, but I still had that prior knowledge from previously, right? And then for my PhD, the same thing. So we covered, again, the metabolic pathways, but we might have added a little bit more detail. So it builds up. It's not like you're going from nothing to, the Krebs cycle, right? It builds up, right? So you don't have to feel like, oh my goodness, it's going to be so hard. You have that prior knowledge already in your head, okay? So that's the courses, and depending on your degree, for some degrees, all you have to do is do coursework. For my degree, we have, for the master's, you have an option of doing coursework or doing your thesis. And so the coursework option, all they had to do was take the classes just like it was undergrad and then graduate. That's all they had to do. And there's other master programs that are like that. You just take the courses. It's just like undergrad, just in more detail, and you graduate. Now some, like my husband, he had to do courses, but at the end, he had to do an oral exam where he had to answer whatever questions they had. That is actually similar to the PhD. So the PhD, again, you have some courses you have to take, and then at the end of those courses, you have to do a qualifiers exam or oral exam. Or you might have a written exam. I had both. I had a written exam and a oral exam. And so they'll ask you questions regarding, the stuff that you learn throughout your years that you were at the school, right? Now, not all master's programs have these oral exams. I know it seems kind of like, oh my gosh, an oral exam, that seems so scary. That's not everywhere, right? like I said, they might just have you take the classes and that's it. The thesis is another thing that, is very common. And with thesis, there's different types of thesis depending on what field you're in. So you might have a thesis where it's just like a paper where you have a topic that you have to research, different books on that particular topic. Like, for instance, if you're doing something in literature, right, you might be looking up different books on the Renaissance, or I don't know. I'm not in literature. I don't understand. But, you might just be writing a long paper about a particular topic. In the science fields, we like to do the scientific method, right? And actually doing an actual experiment. So the same applies with the PhD in these science classes, right? You might have an actual experiment. And so for these, you have different options. You might do something where it's on people, which is what I normally do. I'm a dietitian, so I like working with people. So, my experiment, I had nutrition education, I had nutrition consultation, I did some assessments on them, looked at before and after type thing, because that's something that I really enjoyed, and so I wanted to do my experiment on it. But you might want to do like the traditional experiment where you're looking, at bacteria under the microscope, or, cell cultures, or things like that, where you're in a lab, where you're not working with people. You definitely can do that. Or you can do surveys, where you're giving certain surveys to people and then you analyze the results. Or you can actually take data from previous research, from like major research databases that have been done, and analyze different trends that haven't been analyzed before, and that can be your project. Okay, so you have different options. I will say that the thing that makes a difference is picking a project you enjoy. There are a lot of people who try to get their master's degree, in particular the PhD. A lot of times people, they know what they want to study with their PhD. But with the master's degree, it's almost like, okay, I just need to put a check here, just do a project so I can get my master's degree. And then they don't pick something that they enjoy, and then they get burned out and they quit, or they feel miserable, right? You're working on this project at least for a year. It might be longer than a year. And so if you're doing that every day, working on a project, you want it to be something you enjoy. And I think part of the problem is the fact that there are, I don't know if I can necessarily say it's a problem per se, but there's faculty member at your university that they have to continue to do research themselves. And so they tend to try to recruit students to do their experiments. And then you can use those experiments for your thesis or dissertation projects, right? But part of the problem is sometimes you might not be interested in the same thing. And you end up saying, okay, I'll do this project. And then you get burned out and not happy that you did the project because you're not really interested in it in the first place. So you really need to think for yourself what it is that you enjoy and you're interested in. Part of the reason why I even got into nutrition is because as a dancer, I felt that there wasn't enough information. And so I already had a passion for dance nutrition. So it was easy for me to find my topic as opposed to other people who aren't very sure. So you do want to think about it. You want a topic that you're going to love and enjoy and excited about learning about, right? Because you will spend time with it, okay? So what is the process of doing a thesis or a dissertation? First and foremost, you have to do like a lit review. You have to look up information about the topic to see if this is even something you can study. Has there already been a lot of research on this particular topic, or, is this meaningful? Do we really need to study this? Is this a doable plan, a doable thing to research? And based off of that information, you start writing your lit review. And so I really enjoyed this part because I was able to look up previous information on dance nutrition. So I was able to gain more knowledge and grow in my expertise in the area. And, you start writing your paper. You just start writing it. And then based off of that information, you should start coming up with questions that you might have in your head about the topic. And based off of those questions, you can start formulating an experiment. And so you get your question that you want to investigate, you form a hypothesis and formulate an experiment, and then you're going to try to get that approved by your committee. So before all this even happens, you do have an advisor that you're going to be working with, and you want to pick committee members to be on your committee that's going to help you on your journey. And so these people need to be people who will help you. So for me, I have dance nutrition, so I don't necessarily have anyone in my department that is interested in dance nutrition per se, but I have people who are interested in like sports nutrition, kinesiology, eating disorders, like different little aspects that might be correlated with my topic. And so when I get to certain areas in my research, if I have questions, I know who I can talk to, where I can get guidance for those particular areas. Okay, so you form your committee near the beginning of your process, and then once you've written up your experiment, you will write a short prospectus. And your prospectus is probably, it's not your full lit review. You're gonna have a small part of your lit review, and you're gonna end up having your experiment, like what you plan on doing with your experiment. At our university is 10 pages, which is not bad. A 10-page paper, you can easily do that, right? And then you will give it to your committee to read, and you will present it to them. You will give a presentation, and they will ask you questions about it, make sure that everything is great. If there's changes that need to be made, they'll make those recommendations, and they'll ask you questions, and if they give you the okay, then you'll pass your prospectus, and then you can start your next process. So if you're working with like cell cultures, animals, or data that's already been done, you can go ahead and get started. If you are working with animals, there's definitely some training you have to do, because they want you to not mistreat animals, of course. If you're working with humans, you also have a training that you have to do, because we don't want you to mistreat humans as well. And in addition to that, unfortunately, you have an extra application process you have to go through. You have to do an IRB. So every university has an IRB committee. I guess I don't know if every single university. I would assume every university, but I don't know. And in this committee, you will fill out an application showing exactly what you're going to do for your experiment. Every little step, everything you're going to do, so that way they know you're not mistreating humans. And they'll send feedback back and forth if there's anything that they see as alarming. And once they give you the okay, you can do your experiment. You do your experiment, you recruit your people, or whatever experiment you have, you gather your data, then you analyze your data, and you come to your conclusions, and you write your paper. Once you're done with your paper, you present it before your committee, and you defend your thesis, or you defend your dissertation. And if you pass, which hopefully you should pass at that point, sometimes people don't pass, and you're done. You're done with your degree. You can graduate. So that is pretty much the gist of it. So the first half or so of your degree will be coursework, and then the other half will be your research, if you do the research option. If you don't do the research option, then you just do coursework. So that's pretty much it. I mean, there are other aspects to grad school, but looking at overall trying to get in, I will say when people are in grad school, there's different things that people like to do. Some people like to start right away in research, so that way they get practice using the different techniques. So you might want to find, faculty member that have the techniques that you're looking for. Sometimes people like to work under particular faculty members depending on what their interests are. So like if you're interested in cancer, it doesn't make sense for you to work under someone who's interested in heart disease, right? You probably want to find someone who's interested in cancer. So that way you can learn the techniques that are used for, cancer experiments, right? So that is another thing to look into. Some people actually choose their university based off of the faculty member that is at that university. So that way they gain the experience that they are looking for. There's also a lot of people are concerned about finances. So there's a lot of opportunities for them to pretty much pay your way through grad school. I guess I should say. So like at my school, they allow for you to be a graduate assistant or graduate teaching assistant, where they pay you, and that money can be definitely used for your tuition. There are some schools that actually pay straight out. If you're a grad student, you automatically get a full scholarship. There's some fellowships that are available that help pay your way through school as well. There's, money, that part shouldn't be really an option. Like, there's ways to pay your way through school. That's definitely not an issue if you are really wanting to go. So, but that's the gist of it. I know that was very brief in terms of grad school as a whole. If you have a particular question regarding grad school, regarding the process or anything like that, leave a comment down below. Or, if I'm speaking about grad school and maybe you are in grad school and you notice that there's something that might be helpful for someone else. Maybe you're in the business field or you're in the education field, and there's certain things that you have to do that I didn't speak about. Go ahead and, leave comments down below for other people to gain insight. Like I said, when I started, I didn't know anything about grad school, and I was lost. So hopefully this has helped at least some of you. And those of you who were debating about whether or not you want to go to school or not, hopefully this makes it a little bit more eye-opening, I guess you can say. I really enjoyed my process in going to grad school. It is a long journey. But one thing that I learned, I actually was in the work world. I was in my career. You work just as much in your career as you do in school. So, there you go. All right, that's all I have. I'll see y'all next time. Bye.